Uh, Good evening to all of you. Myself, Ashish Bhatnagar, Secretary to Ethical Standard Board. As you know that audit is one of the most important assignments, the sanctity of which is ensured by various strict provisions in the statutes and the Code of Ethics. There are certain additional stipulations for government audits. To take these issues, today's webcast of Ethical Standard Board on ethical considerations while accepting audit, including government audit, has been fixed, which will be useful for the members. Uh, we welcome the Chairman of Ethical Standard Board, Dr. Anuj Goyal, Vice Chairman of Ethical Standard Board, CA Mangesh Kinre, the learned speaker for today, CA Ankit Maheshwari, and the Jhansi branch of CIRC of ICI for their support in facilitation of this webcast. The members may send their queries. The queries will be taken at the end of this session. Members may like to connect on Twitter handle of Ethical Standard Board on @ICIESB for the regular professional updates. I now request CA Rajiv Gupta, member of Jhansi branch of CIRC of ICI, to take the proceedings further.
Thank you, Ashish. I introduce, as you say, I am today our learned speaker, Mr. Ankit, among us. First of all, I correct to you, Council Member Sikasasi. So it's my honor and privilege to read out the learned speaker today, our program speaker, Mr. Ankit Maheshwari. C. Ankit Maheshwari is a highly accomplished and dynamic chartered accountant with the expertise track record of last 20-year professional experience, spanning the various geographical area with a strong focus on enhancing the financial reporting framework of the law. Himself as the expert in the assurance. Expertise and reputation extended the far beyond his consulting work. He has been actively involved in the various government initiatives in Rajasthan, where he is trusted advisor for challenge the investment in the state. As a former secretary of ICI Jaipur, Ankit ji has been an active member of the organization for the several years. He has been instrumental in driving the initiative that promote the ethical standard and the professional excellences within the deep knowledge and expertise in the finance and accounting, make him a various ability and his ability to provide the strategic guidance and dedication to managing the young professionals and on the reputation the trust advising to the client. Additionally, Ankit ji sir had technical reviewer at the research committee of ICI, where he played a critical role in maintaining the advancing technology technical standard with the professions. Ankit ji has also published the research paper on forward to the academy and professional discussion. अभी मुझे मतलब सारी चीजें मेरे पास है, लेकिन I read in a short manner. So over to the Ashish ji, Secretary of the ESB.
Okay. Thank you, Rajiv sir. Now, the chairman Ethical Standard Board and vice chairman Ethical Standard Board will join shortly. May I now request CA Ankit Maheshwari sir to give his valuable session for today.
Thank you, Ashish ji. Let me place my thanks to CA Rajiv Gupta ji, who is ex officio of Jhansi branch and a regional council member from the region where I come. Thank you for such a warm introduction. Let me also place my thanks to, firstly, the chairman of Ethical Standard Board, CA Dr. Anuj Goyal ji, who has been instrumental in driving a lot of changes in Ethical Standard Board. Recently, we are in process, with help of Ashish ji, we are in process of revising the Code of Ethics, which was earlier revised in 2020. And I must compliment the entire Secretariat of Ethical Standard Board, along with CA Dr. Anuj Goyal ji, for making sure that this much needed change comes in parlance with International Ethical Standard Board. I also want to place my thanks to the Vice Chairman of the Ethical Standard Board, CA Mangesh ji. We have been joined by CA Ujjwal Modi ji also, who is Vice Chairman and Treasurer of Jhansi branch. Lastly, my sincere thanks to all the event enablers of Jhansi branch for making sure that this happens at the right time. Since the period between July to September, there is a lot of change in auditorship, and I categorically requested Ashish ji to take a session on it. It might appear to be a very basic session, very generic session, and the participants here also might think that what all we can possibly deliberate in item 8 and item 9, or section 139 and section 140 of the Companies Act. The idea, Ashish ji, to place this session is that
Yes,
while I
sir.
go to the disciplinary directorate of the institute or the board of discipline, still conventionally, when you look at the track record of the institute, and still the maximum number of cases in disciplinary directorate pertains to item 8 and item 9,
Correct,
which is
correct, sir.
which is
Yes.
the ethical consideration before you accept an audit as to what do you see in item 8 and item 9. And as it looks like a very procedural aspect, very basic aspect, but when we delve deeper into it, when you look into the more practical case laws as to what has been happening across fraternity, I genuinely thought that this session will justify a lot of queries, and at least the inevitant laws जो गलती से करी गई, where we have been inadvertently doing these mistakes, वहां पे बहुत जरूरी है. It's very important that we rectify it hands on. Lastly, before I share my presentation, Ashish ji, I want to sincerely thank you sitting after office hours and making sure that we all are connected through this webinar. I welcome all participants. Ashish ji told that you can put up your questions at last. I am okay to even take it in between, because the
Okay.
only thing which we have to discuss today is item 8 and item 9 and section 139 and section 140 with relevant case laws, because I I always think that we should bring more case laws. We always study our volume 1 and volume 2. Volume 3 is always neglected, and I think volume 3 is something which gives most practical insight the case laws, which I will try to cover in this entire journey. Please free, very open to ask questions. It might appear that we are asking very basic questions, but let's stick to basics. So this session is all about basics and understanding what practical aspects we can, inculcate while we while we do a practice. In this journey, there might be a case that our honorable chairman and vice chairman joins. Ashish ji, we are absolutely okay to, first take their address once they join. But let's, as of now, begin with the technicalities of the session.
Yes,
And
please, sir, please.
I'll try to keep it as interactive. I'll look forward for your answers in the chat box. Zoom has taught us to use this chat box very well. So
Right,
please
right.
don't be hesitant in writing your queries, posting a chat box, putting up your point of view, because eventually what we are doing today is we are interpreting the law in maximum possible way. I'll start share my screen, and
Yes.
Ashish ji visible.
Yes, sir, it is visible, sir.
So I'll straight away come on the topic. The topic talks of two things. One, the ethical considerations while accepting the audit. And very importantly, Ashish ji, as in the beginning of the session mentioned, the government audit, because there are certain appointments which are being done through RBI, because there are certain appointments which are being done by CAG. And these appointments are very time barred appointments. So, for example, for a bank audit, you receive an appointment at March, and you commence the audit in first week of April, and you conclude the audit probably by 15th of April or 20th of the April with regards to the branch audit. In this journey, what happens to the ethical consideration is my question, and is what my deliberation would be. And that is why we specifically decided that we should include government audit specifically, and the code of ethics, the volume 2 already specifies as to the process which needs to be adopted in case of government audit. But yes, the primarily the focus stays on why does an auditorship change? What is the process of changing an auditorship? What all should an incoming auditor should see? What all is a duty of an outgoing auditor? How from regulatory perspective we should look at it? So all these things I'll try to cover each and every aspect. So we start from our first agenda, and the first agenda is the course of action in case we sense that there is a change in auditorship. So, uh, so what as an incoming auditor should we see when we sense that company is in a process of changing in auditorship? I am not going into detail of whether it is a change in first auditor, whether it is out of a casual vacancy, whether it is resignation of the auditor. These are technical things. As we go deeper into it, we will look into the technical things. But as of now, we are just understanding that an auditorship is being changed, and how as uh, as people who are giving assurance should look at it. So first thing, when there's a change in auditorship, right, we see that there are two people who are already involved in this ecosystem. One is the company and one is the old auditor, the retiring auditor, right? So as an incoming auditor, first thing is that the retiring auditor should be asked whether he's been known about this change or not. So generally what we do, we look at an appointment letter, put up a NOC for acting as an incoming auditor, and start doing the assignments and thinking that the NOC has possibly reached. That's a very standard process which people generally follow. I am sub breaking this process from where the intention only occurred. So the company has now shown its intention that they will be replacing their old auditor. A new auditor is coming. So as an incoming auditor, it is our duty to first ask the company, and this is not what I perceive. This comes from the Code of Conduct, Volume 2, which I am just putting up here on your screen. So the first thing, you are duty bound to ask company whether the auditor has informed, the outgoing auditor has been informed. If the answer to this is affirmative, that means company says, company आपसे कहती है कि हमने auditor को we have informed it, then the communication should be addressed to the retiring auditor. What communication, how we communicate, what is the technical item, we will discuss it. But I am saying simple as that. The company is informed. The company has informed the outgoing auditor. You are aware of it. You can go ahead with the communicating with the incoming auditor. The problem happens when you know that the old auditor or the retiring auditor has not been informed, right? And the client is also not willing to make a first move, right? So when you sense this kind of a situation where the old auditor has not been informed and neither your prospective client is not ready to take a first move, then it is necessary to ask him the reason for the proposed change. To the extent possible, looking at my background with Board of Discipline and the benches at disciplinary committee, I would say we should definitely try to document this reason of change from the client side itself. So if you find no valid reason for a change, the code of conduct says it would be a healthy practice not to accept the audit. But in case you still decide, and that's a general practice, you still decide to accept the audit, then you should address a communication to the retiring auditor. The objective of this is whether there are any circumstances which warrant an incoming auditor to not accept the appointment. Now, three, four things, Ashishji, which I sensed as when I was going through the case laws, when I plead those cases there, lot of
Yes, sir.
incoming auditors say that we have addressed this communication to the company and asked the company to address it to the incoming auditor, to the outgoing auditor.
Right, right.
And you will find this is plea number one. When a case
Mhm.
happens, the first plea which all these respondents are taking are
Mhm.
that I have inducted some mediator. I was
Mhm.
trying to get a NOC. We did a telephonic conversation. All this doesn't suffice at our disciplinary directorate. The law is very clear. I'll tell you the law, but make sure that the communication is addressed to the outgoing auditor only. Nobody else, nobody else in between. There has to be a direct communication, a direct nexus, which we need to establish in the due course. So I think now we are able to simulate a situation whenever we get an assignment, right? We should not start looking at the documentation going on section 139, 140 of it, but instead we should show the intent, and the intent is by communicating with the company, by communicating with the outgoing auditor before we give any kind of an acceptance under section 139 of the Companies Act. We will discuss the other acts also, because we will go, when we delve deeper into it, we will try to understand whether this is applicable for internal auditors also, whether this is applicable for tax auditors also. Recently, learned audience, I received a query whether this is applicable for BRSR assurance also. So just today itself, this query was given by Sustainability Board to me, whether we have to take NOC from the previous assurer who was doing audit, and the query further extended, saying that uh, if the assurer is a non-chartered accountant, so for all those who do not understand BRSR, I'll just brief that it is ESG, and it is uh, India has come up with a mandate, and institute have a specific board for it, for assuring it, and there's a standard which we say SSAE 3000 through which this assurance is done. But this is not exclusively done by chartered accountants. This is done by non-CAs also. So the question is, if the assurer is a non-chartered accountant, then also I have to make this communication or not. I'll answer each and every question specifically. But one thing which we are able to ascertain from this entire simulation, there has to be a communication, in my opinion, a written communication with the company and a communication with the retiring auditor. That's all we understand from this, and we take it forward. We take forward the underlying objective of putting up this item 8. Before I read the underlying objective, I would want to you know first read item 8 for you, so that you, in case you have any queries, we are able to address it hands on. So why this communication, how this change happened? Now, once we have decided, once the company have decided that they will go for the change, this is the item 8 of part 1 of first schedule, which the bare act reads: a chartered accountant in practice shall be deemed to be guilty of a professional misconduct if he accepts a position as an auditor previously held by another chartered accountant or a certified auditor who has been issued a restricted certificate under Rule 30, under 1932, without first communicating him in writing. So this item 8 part 1 is mandating us to go deeper into it, and it says that there has to be a communication between incoming auditor and outgoing auditor, and if this communication is not established, then uh, then probably the incoming auditor might be found guilty of uh, professional misconduct. So now I go back to it. So once there is a change in auditorship, you realize that there are three regulatory frameworks which govern this. One is item 8 of part 1 of first schedule, which we were reading, and item 9, which talks about whether an incoming auditor needs to verify or check the compliances of section 139 and section 140 of the Companies Act. These are the two clauses which are invoked in case you are not able to maintain a communication with an outgoing auditor. The other thing is section 139 and section 140 of the Companies Act. I would say the third thing which we are reiterating here is the code of ethics, and what does our code of ethics has to talk upon it. However, there are other regulatory frameworks which are also governed, like CAG regulation 58, which also talks about the government audit and the change in auditorship for the government audits. So we will discuss it gradually. But for basics, I think these three things should be considered when we sense that there is a change in auditorship. Now I would want to go, what is the underlying cause or objective of putting this, right? So we should understand this. Also, we should see whether this objective is fulfilled or not while we are doing a compliance of item 8, while we are communicating this auditor as a previous auditor. So one, the underlying objective of this clause is that incoming auditor needs to understand the reason for the change. When I say the reason for the change, then number one, it is in the interest of an incoming auditor to only understand why this change has happened. Generally, you can see in my fourth point, there are common reasons for change. The common reasons for the change, and which should not bring your attention, is, say, if there's a change in business location and a company wants to change their auditor, this might not be as tricky as if there's a clashing temperament or a client dissatisfaction, and that's where the dispute between the companies and incoming auditors genuinely happen. Also, some common reasons to change can be retirement or death of the partner. There could be reasons like the outgoing auditor has issued qualified opinion. There could be a fee dispute also. And these are all those changes which warrant your attention. I would also want to tell you that, see, eventually the profession lies on two things, right? One, the technical competence, and one is our code of ethics, right? When I look at the code of ethics, I realize one thing, that every time when I read it, I always go on the underlying objectives of mentioning a particular uh, law. So in this case, it is also important that we know the reason for the change. Also, the law is never drafted with an intent to obscure a incoming auditor to audit. Still, law wants to give clients the free will to change their auditorship, but they also have to make sure that the public's legitimate interest is protected. So, a auditor, and that is why this change is there, also to maintain the independence of the existing professional accountant or chartered accountant. So, the objective of fitting an item A is one, the incoming auditor should know the reasons for the change, the outgoing auditor should be able to protect the legitimate interest of the public, and eventually maintain the independence of the existing uh, auditor. So, as incoming auditors, our primary focus, when we understand the law, should be what should be the professional reasons or other reasons not to accept the appointment, right? So here comes the ethical consideration, and we have to dissect the professional reasons for not to accept the appointment. Also, I'll go back to the last point when we were talking of the independence. So one thing is very sure, that in this independence part, the incoming auditor and the outgoing auditor both needs to be both needs to maintain the independence also, and maintain the integrity of the profession also. When I say independence, sometimes we say that, chartered accountants, and conventionally when we were reading audit while we were, students, so we were taught one thing which comes from, various cases of Kingston cotton mills, or all the basics, that chartered accountants should not um, wear the shoes of the client and try to be as independent as possible. We are joined by our Central Council member, CA Dr. Anuj Goel ji, who is the chairman of the Ethical Standard Board. And
Thank you.
I give these proceedings to Ashish ji to warmly introduce with his very busy schedule and back-to-back meetings. Sir, we are blessed that you are here in front of us, and your contribution to Ethical Standard Board will always, remain significant. I briefed the learning audience about the change you are trying to bring in the code of ethics, revising after 2020 and making it in parlance with the International Ethical Standard Board. And now I give it to Ashish ji to, very warmly introduce CA Dr. Anuj Goel ji.
Yes, yes. Yeah, welcome, sir. I welcome the chairman of Ethical Standard Board, CA Dr. Anuj Goel, sir. I'm just reading his profile.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Boss, we are having the presence of our very prominent chartered accountants from Rishikesh. We are having our immediate past chairman of Haridwar branch, CA Harikishan Rathuri sir, on my right, and we are having very senior chartered accountant from Rishikesh, Sekhar sir. So I welcome Sekhar sir and Rathuri sir on behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and on behalf of the Ethical Standard Board of ICI. Ashish, over to you. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Welcome to you, sir. CA Dr. Anuj Goel is the chairman of Ethical Standard Board. He is a practicing chartered accountant and the Central Council member of ICI. He is one of the youngest Central Council members from the Central region. He has also served as chairman of Ghaziabad chapter of the Institute of Company Secretaries of India and the Institute of Cost Accountants of India. He has made significant contributions in his tenure of 17 years in the Central Council, 3 years in the Regional Council, and 6 years in the branch. He is currently the chairman of Ethical Standard Board and chairman of Professional Skills Enrichment Committee and the Publication and CDS Directorate of ICI. He is a goal-oriented man having vast experience of over 30 years and reservoir of knowledge that is supported by various professional degrees, including CA, CS, CMA, ICWA, LLB, MCOM, PhD, DISA, and DIRM. He is a self-motivated, enthusiastic, and hard-working person who has proved to be a great source of motivation, specifically for the youth. Sir, may I kindly request you to give your session for the enrichment of members?
Yeah, thank you very much, Ashish Bhatnagar ji, our dynamic secretary of this very important Ethical Standard Board of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India.
Thank
we
you.
are, of course, having Kalika with you.
And sir, Priyanka is there.
Priyanka, CS Priyanka is from the Ethical Standard Board, and we are having very prominent and dynamic resource person, CA Ankit Maheshwari ji from the Pink City, Jaipur, who is contributing in a great way for the cause of the profession, and we are going to revise the code of ethics at the earliest tomorrow itself at 10. We are having a marathon meeting of the revision of the code of ethics, and Ankit Maheshwari ji is one of the pillar of that group. We are having the presence of CA Sekhar sir, our very prominent chartered accountant from Uttarakhand, from Garhwal, from Rishikesh. He qualified in the year 1990 and is contributing in a great way for the cause of the profession here at Rishikesh. On my right, we are having immediate past chairman of Haridwar branch from Rishikesh, Harikishan Rathuri sir, and we are having, I think, the presence of more than 2,000 chartered accountants from each and every part of the world. So I welcome all of you on behalf of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India and on behalf of the Ethical Standard Board. And today's topic is very, very important. Ethical considerations while accepting the audit, including government audit. I think the pillar of the test function, the foundation of the start of the test function, but particularly the statutory audit, is following all the necessary things which are needed while accepting any new audit. And let me tell you, 80% disciplinary cases to the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India are coming only and only about the failure to adopt that procedure which is required while accepting any new audit, whether it is communication to the previous auditor. There is a great myth that we have to have the NOC from the previous auditor. There is no requirement of any NOC from the previous auditor, but a communication from our side to the previous auditor is required. And I think Ankit ji will tell us that it is necessary for any statutory audit, whether it is government audit, whether it is bank audit, whether it is tax audit, whether it is company audit, and he will certainly let us know that it may be required while accepting even the concurrent audit if it has been undertaken by a chartered accountant earlier. Even that may not be a statutory audit, because the concurrent audit may be undertaken by the bank's internal staff also, by any other professionals also. But if it has been undertaken previously, previous auditor is a chartered accountant, so Ankit ji will certainly communicate us, will let us know that we have to communicate to the previous auditor even in the case of the concurrent audit. And it is not so that I have accepted the appointment and then I am communicating. I have to communicate, and we have to wait for a reasonable time. If no communication is being received, if we do receive the go ahead or the NOC from the previous auditor, then there is no problem. Immediately we can accept the assignment. And if there is no communication from the previous auditor, then I think we have to wait for a reasonable time, which Ankit ji, please communicate to the to our chartered accountants, and please let them know also that if it is an internal audit, if it is a concurrent audit, if it is an inspection, if it is a revenue audit, and the previous auditor is a chartered accountant, whether in that case also we have to communicate to them, and what is the correct way of communication. Sure. If we will be sending through WhatsApp, there is no communication. I don't know, but Ankit ji will certainly, if we are calling informally to the previous auditor over phone, it may not be proper communication. But now email is a proper communication. Now even the speed post may be a valid communication. But if you will be sending the communication through courier, it will not be a proper communication. It will be treated as non-communication. Even if we are sending the things by hand, and it is not duly acknowledged, then also practically it is not a proper communication. So, and in addition to that, what are other ethical considerations that Ankit Maheshwari ji will certainly let us know. And the foundation of any test function, any audit at the time of acceptation, I think we have to be very, very careful whether all the provisions of the Companies Act have been taken care of, whether the previous auditor has resigned, and whether that resignation has been accepted in a proper manner, whether that thing has been uploaded on the MCA portal if need be. That has also to be considered, whether that period of the previous auditor of the 5 years or the 10 years had been before that you are removing that previous auditor. Removal of the auditor is a very, very cumbersome process, friends. You have to have the approval, specific approval of the MCA. Ankit ji will dwell upon this in a more proper manner. Unless and until we are having specific approval of the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, MCA, we are not supposed to. And you have to use your brain, not your heart, while accepting audit, because you have not to be very, very considerate towards the auditee. You are not supposed to be very considerate for his problems, because ultimately at the cost of your membership, you are not supposed to help out the outside world, the trade and industry, the auditee. And I'm quite confident that we are having the best person who is taking care of the even at various levels here, helping out the members at the DC level also. And friends, one very, very important thing. Now, Ashish Bhatnagar ji is having a very, very specific mandate from the leadership of the institute, that each and every practicing chartered accountant, whether Shekhar ji or Hari Kishan Raturi ji, or whether Ankit Maheshwari ji, or whether Anuj Goyal ji, should be on the CA Connect portal. And through CA Connect portal, we should do the marketing, ethical marketing. Each and every chartered accountant who is in practice should be there on the CA Connect portal, and from each and every part of the world, from any search engine. If somebody is searching for the GST consultant in Uttarakhand, the name of only the chartered accountants should come who are expert in the GST in Uttarakhand. If somebody is asking for the Garhwal area, so then only the chartered accountants of the Garhwal should come, and it should not be there that any other professional name should be coming. That is the beauty of our CA Connect portal. And the most important thing, we will be putting our biodata, our profile on the CA Connect portal. And when ethical standard board is taking care of, so everything is ethical on that. You're not to, in that case, you're not to use your brain at all, because the brain has been used by the ethical standard board. And we are putting, registering each and every member of the trade and industry from each and every part of the world on this CA Connect portal. And then we are bridging the gap. We are connecting the ultimate user of the services of the chartered accountants from the service providers. And there may be n number of services which can be imparted not only by the chartered accountants, but also by other professionals. But it is our endeavor that if the chartered accountants can grab those opportunities which is going to other professionals, it is our responsibility, rather our religion, to see that how we can have this CA Connect portal for the benefit of the membership at large. We are already having n number of registration, and now on push basis through SSP portal also, we are trying to see that how each and every member of a profession who is in practice can be on CA Connect portal. And very soon we will declare that every practicing chartered accountant is on CA Connect portal, and we will ensure that each and every member of the trade industry should also be registered on the CA portal, and we will ensure that how we can grab the opportunities which are coming for the chartered accountants. Those opportunities may be available to other professionals also, but we know that chartered accountants are the best professionals, and if the chartered accountants will be providing those services, I think that would not only be good for the profession, but also good for the trade and industry, and will be good for the nation also. caconnect.ici.org, you may go on that, and within a minute you can get yourself registered. You can put your profile, and then you can edit your profile also at any point of time. So I will not be taking you further time, as we are very, very eager to hear our honorable guest speaker, CA Ankit Maheshwari sir. And before that, if Shekhar sir want to say something on that, because he is having a very, very vast experience of 34 years in the audit profession. So if two lines, if he can say on the ethical issues, on the while accepting the audit, what cautions one has to take care, so that can be further escalated by the Ankit Maheshwari sir. So over to Shekhar sir.
Good evening, everyone. I'm fortunate that I'm with Anuji today. As next month we are having a Central Council conference here in Uttarakhand. So we're here together. Regarding this ethics, Anuji is already elaborated and Ankit is there as expert. But so for the communication to previous auditor is concerned, that is really very important. And before accepting an audit, I think it is more helpful if we listen to the previous auditor. We may come to know about whatever shortcomings or weaknesses of the client there, which our client may not be communicating to us. So those things we can only communicate with the previous auditor. So it is always helpful, though ethically it is also required. But as a for better doing the audit of client, I think that communication is must, and it should be in time, and a reasonable time should be given to the previous auditor, and we should try to get his comments on how the client is doing his accounting, and what are the weaknesses basically. What is the reason that the previous auditor is resigned or is not willing to continue or is removed? So those reasons and that communication is very important to take accept the audit. I think.
Yeah, thank you, Shekhar sir, and I think very, very good message that not only formally we should try to connect with the previous chartered accountant, if possible, informally also, because he is from our same fraternity, and we will certainly come to know what is happening in that entity, and what are the reasons that that auditor has been replaced or resigned or removed. So I think that is also very, very important. And of course, we should try. It should be our endeavor not only to communicate, but try to have the NOC with us, no objection certificate, so that there should not be any confusion about the communication. So we should certainly try to see that if we can have the NOC with us. We are having Rathodi sir. You want to say something?
सर बस थैंक यू सर. मैं सर इसमें एक ही बात को ऐड करना चाहता हूँ. वैसे सभी हम ही जितने प्रैक्टिसिंग चार्टर्ड अकाउंटेंट सभी लोगों को अपने एथिकली हमको जो हमारे इंस्टीट्यूट ने दिए गए उसको फॉलो करना चाहिए. लेकिन पर्टिकुलरली बात करें सर, जो इसमें आज का जो सेमिनार है, जो वेबिनार रखा गया, जब सर हम लोग अपना ऑडिट का असाइनमेंट लेते हैं और हम अपना प्रीवियस ऑडिट को कम्युनिकेट करते हैं, तो ये देखने को मिलता है कि टाइम लिमिट हम लोग मतलब कम्युनिकेट करते हैं, एक ऐसा समझते हैं कि लीगल कंप्लायंसेस है. तो मेरा सभी से ये रिक्वेस्ट रहेगा कि जो हम कम्युनिकेट कर रहे हैं प्रीवियस ऑडिटर को, और हम भी जब एक्सेप्ट करें तो प्रीवियस वालों को टाइमली हमको प्रॉपर देना चाहिए. ऐसा नहीं कि ऑडिट का जो ड्यू डेट है हम लास्ट पॉइंट में आ रही है, हम प्रीवियस ऑडिटर को 7 दिन पहले या 10 दिन पहले दें. मेरा ये इसमें मतलब सभी लोगों से रिक्वेस्ट रहेगा कि जो हम लोग जब कंप्लायंस करें या कम्युनिकेशन करें तो वो बहुत टाइमली उसको प्रीवियस करें, सो दैट हमको प्रीवियस ऑडिट से अगर कोई हमको इन्फॉर्म से मिल रही है तो ऑडिट के हम उसको ड्यू कर सकते हैं.
Thank you very much, Harikishan Rathodi sir, Shekhar sir, and I'm really happy that Ankit Maheshwari ji, who is very, very prominent professional and is helping out the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India in various endeavors. He has helped ICI in the research committee also. He has helped ICI in our professional skill enrichment committee also. And I'm quite confident that we will be wiser in that particular topic which has been chosen today. And I am really very happy that he is helping us out in our endeavors. We are having CA Ujjwal Modi ji, our honorable event enabler, our very, very prominent chartered accountant from Jhansi. So thank you very much, Ujjwal ji. Over to CA Ankit Maheshwari ji. Very very proud of for Ankit Maheshwari.
Thank you so much, sir. I think the kind of deliberation you had, जो मैं 2 घंटे में बोलता, you summed it up in 20 minutes. Almost you touched upon every aspect. But sir, we are glad with all the busyness you have and so many commitments. You are still still joining at such a time. Most importantly, the update which you gave on CA Connect. So there is a change here also while we were talking about communication with the previous auditor. So because we have now incorporated the concept of UDIN, and that has also been added in one of the modes of communicating to the previous auditor. So I am sure that the CA Connect also solves this purpose, because in maximum times we find कि कोई gap रह गया between incoming auditor and outgoing auditor. Sir, this is a fantastic initiative only under your leadership only, and with Ashish ji, taking it forward. I think this would have taken place, and I have never seen ethical standard board being so active and so prominent in almost and touching upon each minutest issue the way it is touching now. We are honored, and my regards to team from Rishikesh. Last year, possibly at this time only we were together, and now the year has lapsed, and I'll take the session forward. But I think all 1,500, 2,000 people who has attended this webinar is benefited of what is exactly happening at top leadership, and we should genuinely thank CA Dr. Anuj Goyal ji for making sure that he comes here. Sir, lots and lots of regards to you for the kind of commitment you have for the profession. This is immense. This is immense. Serving since so many years for us selflessly. I think everybody should compliment you.
Thank
I'll
you.
take forward the session, sir. I'll take forward the
Yes,
session
please,
from here.
please.
So we go back to the topic, and we were discussing, and as very rightly pointed by Anuj Goyal ji, that as incoming auditors, we should not enter into the shoes of the client and wear our own shoes because of the independence aspect. And that is why I said that this is a major challenge, and probably you will find maximum cases where when there is a dispute between incoming auditor and outgoing auditor, and Ashish ji, when we summon someone or the committee summon someone on examination, specifically the client backs off. Client kabhi nahi aata, and it is the independence of chartered accountant which needs to be maintained. So make sure that for whatever happens, how big the assignment is, how big the assignment value, how small it is, please don't. We are always expected to be independent. We should not try ourselves in extending any help to the company. Also, we should make sure that we should not try harder in terms of doing any kind of services from ethical standard board which is non-attestation, but with attestation services. When such things happen, when item 8 and item 9 is invoked, when a complaint is made, so institute has the disciplinary directorate also has a formal process of taking up a complaint, as well as ethical standard board also have a formal process of taking up a complaint only in case of unjustified removal of auditor, because these are all related things. So in this complaint, when certain things happen, so the matter starts from not communicating with the previous auditor. चालू होता है कि हमने previous auditor से communicate नहीं किया, item 8 invoke होता है, फिर चालू होता है कि Companies Act की compliance नहीं देखी 139 140 की, problem starts further and item 9 invoke होता है, फिर चालू होता है कि कोई ऐसी सर्विसेज भी अंडरटेक करी जो कि बुक कीपिंग के नेचर की थी, जो कि एडवोकेसी के नेचर की थी, वो सर्विसेज, दो सर्विसेज which we were not expected to do with attestation services. There, item 7, the gross negligence is also invoked with other misconduct. Also, I have a small suggestion here with all my experiences with matters of bench. Once a matter is initiated by a bench, I think we should reply it as candidly as possible. We should not try to hide any fact from the bench, because sometimes we see while evaluating the cases, we see the respondent furnishing forged NOC, forged uh, courier receipt or speed post receipt. All these things do nothing but invoke other misconduct also. So the punishment to item 8 and item 9 is far lenient than punishment which somebody gets for an other misconduct or gross negligence. And that is why I am correlating it that for any client, please don't lose your independence. So we were there on the primary focus, and primary focus was that we, as an incoming auditor, we will try to identify the professional and other reasons. I told you that there are three major reasons which I said and which should be, taken into attention. Reason number one, if there is an undisputed fee. Reason number two, if you sense that there is a qualified opinion which the outgoing auditor has given. And reason number three can be the conduct of the outgoing auditor. These two, three things needs to be specifically taken care. As I told you in the beginning also, that clients have inherent right to change their accountant anytime. It is the new Companies Act which has become very stringent, in which if there is a change in auditorship even at AGM and the tenure of 5 years is not completed, it needs to be fulfilled as a casual vacancy. जो अनुज जी कह रहे थे that there has to be a special resolution which needs to be accompanied with the permission of central government, which is the Ministry of Corporate Affairs. And friends, this permission is not easy. Getting these permission requires a lot of time and effort. So making sure that the Companies Act itself has been formulated in such a stringent way. So at least, and as an outgoing auditor, we should never obscure an incoming auditor to come and change. Lastly, as an outgoing auditor, we should also enter into the, we should also try understanding the client's perspective. And if a client wants to make a change, even, if there's no undisputed fee or there is no hurt to your independence, as an outgoing auditor also, it is our duty that we acknowledge this change respectfully and make sure that, unnecessarily the incoming auditor and the clients are not harassed. That is something which I should make it a point, because sometimes all these issues start where, as an outgoing auditor, you feel hurt about something, you feel hurt about the change in auditorship, and you stop cooperating with the incoming auditor and the client. This change needs to come. If this change happens, trust me, friends, we were discussing that 80% of the cases pertains to incoming and outgoing auditor. If this happens, there will be straight reduction in 50% of the cases. Wherever this dispute has arisen, in 50% of the cases, we realize that sometimes outgoing auditors are obscuring this change, the incoming auditor to do this audit. I think we should welcome that move in case of client wants a change. And that would be my, I'll sum up the underlying objective of putting item 8. We discussed the regulatory framework. I move forward from here. And as as the chairman ethical standard board just said, that the condition is not about seeking a NOC. The condition is about communicating with the previous auditor. And the question, when there is an objection of an incoming auditor, the question comes here whether we should take up an engagement or not, which we will deliberate when we move to the next slide. But important is that he has to first communicate before accepting a position as an auditor, which was previously held by another chartered accountant. When I say this, So let us take an example. Let us assume that in a company has company has asked you for a consent to act as an incoming auditor. What should be your course of action? So sometimes we give this acceptance to the company and the write to the incoming auditor at a later date. Out of all cases which Anuji was discussing, at least on the sample, if I take this sample logically, 20% of the cases pertains to where that there is a problem in the date. That is, auditor has already accepted the appointment, and at a later date he has communicated to the outgoing auditor. That's where the problem one starts, and we have to take it very seriously. So before you give any consent, please make sure that you have given a reasonable time to outgoing auditor to respond to the communication which you have made. I'll touch upon certain things which Anuji also touched upon, and we will try to deliberate each and everything in a very logical way. Number one is about certificate of posting, which he was saying that a courier or any certificate of posting, institute does not consider it as a conclusive proof of communication. So we have to make sure the modes which are prescribed by the institute, we will discuss those modes as to how should we make those communication. But one thing is there, couriers or certificate of posting will not be a conclusive proof of communication. So kindly avoid this way to communicate to the outgoing auditor. Second, you have made a communication and you have found that at registered AD, the acknowledgement says RPAD that premises are found logged. So it might be a case that communication has not received, and when you receive this message at acknowledgement from the Indian Post that the premises were found logged, then what do we need to do? So as incoming auditors, you don't worry about it. We assume that it is deemed to have been delivered to the retiring auditor. What is important to ascertain is this post should go to the registered address of the practicing professional, the address which is registered with the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India. Ashish ji, I'll take a 10 seconds break, 10 seconds, just a minute.
Okay, sure, sir, sure.
Sorry for inconvenience.
Yes.
Ashish ji, am I audible now?
Yes, sir, you are audible.
Okay. So we have to think of, if the premises are found logged, don't worry, you can continue with the engagement. Just make sure that the address which has been registered with the institute is the address on which this communication is made. Sometimes we receive that the firms are not found at the given registered address, right? We still consider deemed to be delivered. However, here the onus lies on the retiring auditor that he proves that it was really not served at the registered address, or the intent was not there to serve it. So there are two things. Once you find that the registered address is not found, you have to opt for two approaches. One, from ethical point of view, it is assumed that it is deemed to be delivered. But as a professional courtesy, our code of conduct says that the new auditor must communicate and act jointly with the previous auditor. So we should try and establish that communication. which means that you can begin with the engagement, but you should not, do any attestation unless this communication has been made. The last is the special audit under Income Tax Act, and sometimes you are appointed as a special auditor under Income Tax Act. Institute suggests it is a healthy practice that you communicate with the previous auditor, the tax auditor who was auditing before taking up an assignment. A special audit, since is been appointed by the CBDT, that a special auditor is appointed by the regulator itself, and that is why sometimes members feel that we are not expected to communicate anyone because we don't have any previous auditor to this special audit. The idea is that in this case, institute suggests, they are saying it is a healthy practice. So it's not a mandate, kind of a mandate, but it is assumed that this practice is a healthy practice. And as a tax auditor, as the previous tax auditor who is doing the previous statutory auditor should be communicated right before undertaking the assignment. Now this gives question to 4-5 things before we move forward from here. Question number 1, what Anuj said, that we have to touch upon this thing, whether statutory auditor is the only audit in which we have to seek NOC. No, any assurance engagement needs to be now taken as an NOC. So be it stat audit, be it internal audit, be it concurrent audit, be it revenue audit, be it government department, be it not government department, irrespective who has been making the appointment, if this falls under the category of assurance, then if there is a UDIN which is being generated while doing all these audits, while performing these attestation functions, this means that the communication with the previous auditor needs to be made. The problem lies, I can tell you a case where, I was myself pleading. The problem is that the appointment was done by a government agency, a government telecom agency. Since the appointment was done through tenders, so the almost, all participants, all chartered accountants participated in the tender. The policy generally is the lowest bidder will get the work and will do the attestation function. So this pertained to internal audit. This pertained to internal audit of this telecom communication through a tender process. The members participated into the tender. The lowest bidder was awarded the work. Now, as the lowest bidder who is doing internal audit of the telecom sector, I am asking this question to you, whether he was required to communicate with the previous auditor. And this gives us another question. When we take up an internal audit or a revenue audit from a government sector, is this government department even communicating us the previous auditor who was doing that particular audit? This was happening for circles. This was happening for various circles of this telecom, and one circle was allotted to one of the member, and he thought that he never had the details of the previous auditor there also. Unfortunately, he never tried, as I told you that, there's important that a client communication needs to be established. Unfortunately, there was no client communication which was established by the incoming auditor also, and with the government department. All in all, eventually, the crux is that neither he was having the details of the incoming auditor. He was appointed through a tender. The tender was of an internal audit. If he has not communicated with the incoming outgoing auditor, is he still guilty? क्या वो अभी भी guilty रहेगा? The answer to this is yes. Yes, he is guilty. Irrespective, it was done through a tender, it doesn't make a difference. Irrespective, he was the lowest bidder, it also doesn't make a difference. Irrespective, it was a government organization, doesn't exempt you to be independent. irrespective, the name of the previous auditor was also not communicated. So what should have been the ideal steps what institute suggests? Institute said that you should have communicated to the government agency after L1 bidder that we will take up only this appointment only when we are known to the incoming auditor, and the incoming auditor is known about this change, outgoing auditor is known about this change. Once that is communicated, we have to make sure that one step ahead, even if you have to give an acceptance, because sometimes in government engagements, you have to give this acceptance. Institute's Code of Conduct Volume 2 prescribes that in government audits, even in bank audits, even in AG audits, the acceptance which you are giving to the banks for branch audit, the CAG should be conditional acceptance. And this conditional acceptance is only validated once you are able to give reasonable time to the previous incoming auditor. So in all the cases, my point to deliberate this in detail here is that please don't consider that it is a government engagement and thus we are sourcing it through tender, and thus there is no requirement of communicating irrespective of the engagement. I hope I am clear. So all in all, make sure that this is done. In this, we move ahead, and now we were discussing what is a positive evidence of delivery. If you have any questions till now, kindly start putting these questions to the chat box also, so that we can interimly answer. I'll take it forward till then before you put up these questions. Now how and the mode of this communication. So one thing which we were reading on the previous slide, that certificate of posting is not a valid way to communicate. I take it forward. I am taking it what are the acceptable methods. The acceptable method which institute prescribed is the registered AD, and that is the most acceptable and the most conventional method which institute always accepts as a positive evidence of delivery. The second is the hand delivery, and Anuji was discussing hand delivery, and he told that even you deliver it by hand, unless you have a written acknowledgement, doesn't solve the purpose, because when the matter is raised to Board of Discipline or bench, I told you a lot of people take this plea that it was delivered by hand. Simple question what BOD chairman or what the bench ask is whether you have a proof of delivery or not. If no proof of delivery, the case is not even heard. So to defend that your item 8 is you have complied to item 8, this positive evidence of delivery is required. Two changes which are interesting changes. आप में से जिन्होंने भी पहले इसको पढ़ा है तब तक we only had a concept of registered AD. Now we have email acknowledgement with revised code of ethics 2020, and a valid email address is what will be required of retiring auditor, and this email address should be the same address which is registered with the institute or their last known official mail. In this case, now we take email acknowledgements also. I'll still suggest when you write this communication to the previous auditor, please expect, at least ask him whether he should acknowledge that you have sent a written communication, and if he wants some time to give NOC or not, he can take that time of if he wants to bring certain things to your attention. The last change, which is an acceptable method, and that's what I was deliberating to Anuj and because Ashish ji is also taking care, since UDIN portal is also now considered a part of it. I am sure that there has to be some nexus with CA Connect also, so that people get right email IDs and the mode of communication is tracked by institute directly itself. So we have two conventional methods. a conventional method of registered AD, a conventional method of hand delivery, but again making sure that a written acknowledgement is put up against it. Email acknowledgement is now acceptable, but we should know that the registered address of this email with the institute and the UDIN portal for which the specific guidelines are yet to come. But you will see CA Connect or UDIN portal, imbibing all these modes of communication as a positive evidence of delivery. Other than this, if any mode has been presented, I have never witnessed or found in my study any case where institute has not found respondent guilty under item 8. So please make sure if you are defending item 8 from disciplinary point of view, these 4 evidences are with you. I take it forward. And now we have some interesting things. So now if this communication happens very properly with registered mode, I don't think there is a challenge. The challenge starts when in a communication you don't find a no objection but an objection. And what do we do out of this? So I would first want you to, look into few things. One, a objection could be as grave as non-compliance of Section 139 and Section 140 of the Companies Act, which itself is nothing but invocation of item 9. This means that outgoing auditor has communicated that I have not been removed as per Section 140 of the Companies Act, or you have not been validly appointed under Section 139 of the Companies Act. We will do step-by-step analysis of what 139 says and 140 says. But I am saying if this is the answer by the outgoing auditor, I think there is a red flag. We should look at this very seriously, and this is something which we can't ignore. Second, the outgoing auditor can raise an objection which talks about non-payment of undisputed audit fee. So if there is an undisputed audit fee, and this is specifically mentioned in the acceptance of an outgoing auditor, we should make sure that this undisputed audit fee needs to be resolved. Institute has given a lot of things. I can tell you 2-3 case studies and what the guidelines of the council are with respect to undisputed audit fee. Guideline number 1, this has to be the fee pertaining to only and only statutory audits. Any other reimbursements or expenses will not be considered here. Guideline number 2, when it is about undisputed audit fee, then we also need to check whether the ledger of the incoming auditors is gives a clear picture. If he says that there is an undisputed audit fee, the first thing as a evidence you should ask is the ledger also which is being maintained by the company, and whether there is any fee which is due or not. In some cases, it has been found that there is a issuance of qualified audit report, and that is another reason for which an assignment is not. We should, as incoming auditor, should not accept the assignment. All these 3 things needs to be looked into properly. So these are not that if this happens, then you have to leave the assignment or not undertake it. You have to evaluate it, because now as an incoming auditor, you have not received NOC, right? You have received certain objections. Your focus of objection should be, out of these 3 objections which I am coming out, how do we resolve that? If it is an undisputed audit fee, we should immediately ask client to make the payment before we accept it. If by some reason the you don't have the NEFT, client don't have the NEFT details or the bank details to make, then there has to be a demand draft which needs to be made in favor and to be delivered to the incoming, to the outgoing auditor. If there is a qualified auditor's report, in this case you have to look into the reasons for qualification. If you think outgoing auditor, now this is judgment, law has nothing to say, law doesn't prohibit you to take up an assignment if an audit report is qualified. Law says that if there is a qualified report, as an incoming auditor, you please assess the grounds of qualification. And if you think the qualification was legitimate, was logical, then as a matter of ethics, there is no question, but you should not accept that engagement. But if you think that the outgoing auditor has been unjustifiably acting or has unjustifiably issued a qualified or a modified opinion, or is being found to, because he's into a fiduciary relationship with the client, is found to be, troubling the client. If such things are happening, then the council guidelines say you may go ahead taking the engagement. So, long story short, मोटी मोटी बात अगर यहाँ से हम समझ पा रहे हैं तो बड़ी क्लियर है कि अगर कोई क्वालिफाइड रिपोर्ट इशू हुई है, it doesn't mean that you can't take up an assignment. You have to extend your procedure, check whether the qualified opinion has been logical or not. If not logical, then you can still take up the assignment. If there is an undisputed fee, you have to check that undisputed fee pertains to statutory audit only. You might have to look into the engagement letters of the previous auditor, check at what fee arrangement was done, what was the ledger, how it has been settled. If you are confident that the statutory audit fee has been settled, you can go ahead taking up an engagement. The third is the non-compliance of section 139 and 140, which is the appointment section. And if appointment is not valid, or if there is unjustified removal of the auditor, then in that case, we will understand the process as we deliberate into this session forward. I hope this is clear. Now we come, what are the duties of retiring auditor? So it says that the retiring auditor must diligently provide any relevant information to the incoming auditor. So as I told you previously also, that there could be a case that client wants a change. And if client wants a change, as an outgoing auditor, I think we are duty bound of certain things. One, we should gracefully accept that change. I told you previously also, 50% of the cases are only happening because outgoing auditor was also not cooperative without a valid reason. Also, there might be certain cases that we find that outgoing auditor sometimes is obstructing. How much he's obstructing, you should always take a legal route. As incoming auditor, we should not try and start resolving the problem looking at the client. The best way to resolve it is that you can file a complaint at Ethical Standard Board for unjustified removal also. You can file a complaint at the disciplinary directorate also. If this outgoing auditor is not vacating or creating an obstruction, or client is dissatisfied, he's not doing the audit timely, because when we deliberate such cases at the level of bench, sometimes the complainant is also questioned, and the questions are like, I have seen real cases where in one board meeting, client is asking the auditor to give signed audited statements, but still no comments are received, and these are minutized. These are minutized at the level of board. These are minutized multiply. The communication with the outgoing auditor is there constantly, and in this case, still the outgoing auditor is not responding and neither allowing the incoming auditor to come. So in these cases, sometimes it can backfire also. So unnecessary obstruction is something which we should avoid. As retiring auditor, make sure that you provide diligently provide all the relevant information to incoming auditor, which he believes that is necessary for an incoming auditor before to consider the engagement, right? Uh, Also, if retiring auditor doesn't respond to incoming auditor can proceed after waiting for a reasonable time. As a good practice, as a good practice of being an outgoing auditor, I would always suggest to, gracefully accept it and respond it rather than leaving this unprofessionally, leaving any communication from the incoming auditor unprofessionally. That's something which needs to be taken care. So this is what the duty of a retiring auditor is, but make sure the information to the incoming auditor is transmitted well in time, right? So some council guidelines which I still want to discuss. One is that communication is required for all kind of audits and assurance. As we discussed, right? We have now discussed it. All the kind where you are generating a UDIN, where there is an assurance nature which has been given. I have another question for you. I have a question for the learned audience here. If the previous person who was auditing is a non-chartered accountant, so that can happen in case of, I told you, the BRSR assurance. That can happen in case of sometimes the limited assurance engagements. That can happen in case of even internal auditor. The previous professional was not a chartered accountant. Do I still need to communicate? The answer is, as a healthy practice, institute even recommends you to communicate a non-professional, uh, a non-professional or somebody who is not a chartered accountant to establish a communication. However, on these grounds, you will not be held guilty at the level of directorate. What institute accepts is, see, the difference between an accountant and a chartered accountant is this charter only, right? So chartered accountancy is nothing but a way of life, is not only a way of exercising your profession, but actually a way of life, right? If you conventionally go back, while we adopted this charter in 1949, right? Previously, it came some extracts came from the charter of the England and Wales, and there we used to learn that a passenger was traveling with a train in a train without a train ticket, and he was caught, and he was still considered to be guilty under other misconduct. uh, that is why I am saying that if that offense can, bring disrepute to the profession, so that is why chartered accountancy is a way of life, and we should try that. Even if somebody is not coming from our profession, we should still communicate with him in writing before taking up an engagement as a good ethical practice. So that's my point one. Point two is communication in case of assignments done by other professionals. I have discussed it. The third is lack of time in acceptance of government audit. And this is the issue why I included government audits into it. Let's look into what our code of conduct and our council guidelines have to say while we undertake government audits. First thing it says is that communication with the previous auditor is mandatory for both government and non-government audit. In the case study which I was discussing of a telecom communication company, which is a government sector company, I told that even it was a government audit, even it was through a tender, still this establishment of communication was necessary. Now I'll tell you where the problem happens. I have sensed the problem happening mostly in case of bank audits and appointments which are done by AG. So if you recall, I'll simulate how does a bank audit communication takes place. I can simulate a process of State Bank of India, might be, that might be able to help you at certain level. So if you are being reappointed or you are being firstly appointed for the first time, a bank communicates that they are offering you an appointment for financial year, and they very quickly ask you to send set of details with cancelled checks, GST number, and a very quick acceptance. Most of the people accepts it, and then bank starts sending the name of the previous auditors. They allot the branches along with the name of the previous auditors, and before undertaking that audit or before commencing that audit, you communicate with the previous auditor, and and sometimes you wait for NOC, or sometimes you telephonically insist that this NOC is given. Sometimes people start that assignment in a time of 1 or 2 days, because this is usually happening on 27, 28, 29th March, and on 2nd, 3rd April, you are expected to start a branch audit. This entire process which RBI or banks are doing is not in compliance with our code of conduct. My problem here is that the process which has been laid down says, you can read it in point 2, if the assignment schedule is tight, which is like a bank branch audit, the acceptance which you are sending it to the bank, because while they are first giving you this communication, they are expecting you to give an acceptance. This acceptance has to be conditional acceptance, and conditional acceptance means that your acceptance is based on the communication which you established with the previous auditor. Please ask this question to yourself: when these bank audits or AG audit comes to us, how many of us gives conditional acceptance? If the answer to this is yes, I think I'm glad that majority of the audience here is able to comply to this principle which is prescribed by our code of ethics, right? Also, in this acceptance letter, you have to clarify that the final acceptance depends on the previous auditor's response and any professional objection. So exactly this should be the part of the acceptance which you need to share it with the bank. Similarly, for AG also, sometimes AG gives you the name of the previous auditor. Sometimes it doesn't give you. When AG doesn't specify the name of the previous auditor, the consent, which is, even if it is in AG format, there has to be a footnote to it that this is a conditional acceptance. Also, in AG's case, generally you are appointed by the client, and you give the acceptance to client. In case of AG, the AG appointment, the appointment is done by AG, and the consent is also given by AG. And if there is a removal, then the removal is also done by AG. And in this case, AG, as I told you, has specific regulation, which is regulation 58 for removal of the auditors. And AG, their own act is also act like a Chartered Accountancy Act, and their act also overrides a lot of things. Long story short, I am trying to communicate one thing. Even in that case, the acceptance which you have to give to AG should be a conditional acceptance. Also, there has to be a communication once you know the name of the company which you are being appointed. How many of us actually do not a oral, but a verbal communication with that government company and try to understand the challenges? That government company can also tell you the name of the previous auditor. Get in touch with the name of the previous auditor. Communicate with the previous auditors first, then give a final acceptance to the company or to the AG before taking up this engagement. So, friends, I think that that's something which we need to delve more deeper into as to, and that's a problem area also, that we are not giving these conditional acceptance, just taking up the matter, just giving a blanket acceptance in terms of, completing the bank audits or AG audits at the earlier. How big, see, institute is also regulator, RBI is also regulator, SEBI is also a regulator, AG is also a regulator. When there's a regulator, they have their enactment in place. But as chartered accountants, our first responsibility is to comply to the code and not violating their code also. So we should first make sure that all these things, when our council says that there has to be a conditional acceptance, there is no question that you should give any kind of a blanket acceptance to any bank or AG. That's my clear suggestion over government audits. With regard to item 8, Ashish ji has concluded item 8 here. And if you have any questions pertaining to item 8, how
Yes,
the
sir.
communication needs to be done, what is the process, the government audit, uh, any questions, we are more than happy to answer it. Otherwise, we move on a very important aspect, and that should be the concluding aspect also, which is item 9, which is the compliance of the Companies Act. Erstwhile, it was Companies Act 1956. In revised code of conduct, institute has given any clarification on compliance of section 139 and 140 to be replaced by section 225 and 224 or 225 of the Companies Act. Any questions, Ashish ji, you receive as of now?
Yes, sir. We have actually most of the questions are related to this item 8 only. And
Okay.
I am requesting CA Sagar Atri ji.
Okay.
Sagar Atri ji, are you there, sir? S-
So, Ashish ji, what we do, I'll
yes, sir.
complete very quickly. I complete item 9 and then we take up the questions then. If
Okay, okay, fine, sir. Fine.
right.
Yes.
Because then I think there might be certain queries which might get resolved discussing the item 9. Still, if there are some questions which are left, please write it in the chat box.
Right.
I am going back on item 9 of part 1 of first schedule, which says that an incoming auditor should should check the requirements of section 139 and 140 and then only accept the appointment. Now, in certain cases, why item 9 is very important, right? I'll tell you, we see certain cases where sometimes the auditor files ADT1, the incoming auditor files ADT1, and then he communicates to the outgoing auditor. When outgoing auditor is communicated, then outgoing auditor says that he has certain objections with regard to maybe, the assurance with regard to uh, the qualified report or any disputed fee. I have seen cases where ADT1 is filed and post that this incoming auditor has to actually resign because he has not seen the NOC before filing the ADT1. So once this ADT1 is filed, and if you have to resign, then you have to file a ADT3. Now, when Director Discipline of our institute asks a query that why you accepted this appointment, the plea of the respondent is that he has already resigned, so it doesn't make much of a difference. This plea is not acceptable to our disciplinary directorate, and we should make sure that I told you forget ADT1. ADT1 is a very later stage. Forget ADT1. You have to, before you even accept it, the communication should have been made. There should not have been 1 day gap, because this 1 day gap make sure that the removal of the auditor has not been done properly and is a violation of section 139 and 140 of the Companies Act. So why item 9? I think now it is clear that it is obligatory on the incoming auditor to ascertain from the company that appropriate procedure in the matter of his appointment has been duly complied. So the bold statement here is, so no shareholder or retiring auditor may at a later day challenge the validity of the appointment. Thus, it is in the interest of the public, the shareholders' interest also. It is also in the interest of the retiring auditor, and retiring auditor, because in maximum cases, retiring auditor says, I was never communicated of the fact that I have been removed. When we and uh, there has been two appointments which is being done for a retiring auditor who is already continuing the appointment, and other is for the new auditor. And once the new auditor signs the audit report, that's the time retiring auditor comes to know that this has taken place. So making sure. Also, I had a very interesting and tricky case, right, which pertain to the tenure of the appointment, because we are considering the Companies Act. So we should consider the block of 5 years in which a auditor is ratified every year, and in between the 5 years, if any casual vacancy happens, or in case the auditor is removed, then a permission of central government and special resolution is found. So I was looking at a case in which in fifth year, that is the fifth year where AGM is expected to happen. So 4 years, uh, this company is continuing with the outgoing auditor. So the appointment actually happens from the AGM to AGM, that is conclusion of the fifth AGM if somebody is appointed at first AGM. And in fifth AGM, the problem is that this auditor has not cooperated and uh, he has not signed the financials by 30th September. Now, this company in AGM resolves that they will appoint a new auditor in place, and they think that they are appointing this auditor after the tenure of 5 years. So they should not say this is not a casual vacancy. They can fulfill it without fulfilling the requirements of central government. And the incoming auditor also feels that this is happened after the tenure of his AGM, and thus he should be, allowed to take up this assignment. I am reiterating there the code of law is clear. If in any AGM appointment has not taken place of an auditor, the retiring auditor shall continue. So in AGM, there has to be new auditor who needs to be appointed, and the period to consider is the financial year, not considering that the AGM has not AGM, since the appointment was valid till the AGM, thus we are considering it like that. So this is something which technically one should understand. I have made 2 points out of this story. Please understand it well. One, if there is no appointment which is being made in an AGM, it is deemed that the retiring auditor is only continuing. Thus, if you take any appointment after that thinking that the tenure of 5 years has been complete, shall not remain to be valid, because the retiring auditor is expected to continue into it. Second, uh, in this case also, even though the appointment is valid till AGM, from one AGM to conclusion of AGM, but it pertains to financial year also. The intent of the law is to accommodate financial year. If that financial year is not accommodated, it has been clearly specified that we can take forward the outgoing auditor, or I would say the auditor which was expected to retire will be deemed to continue as an incoming auditor. We move forward. So what should be the steps which an incoming auditor should take? So there it depends how, when, and under what circumstances the appointment has taken place. So when the auditor is appointed as a first auditor, then he should make sure the first auditor appointment provisions of the Companies Act, which say that the appointment has to be made by Board of Discipline by Board of Directors within a span of 30 days from the registration of the company. So if you are the first auditor, what you should look, whether the company has made whether the Board of Directors have made the appointment within 30 days or not. If not, then the compliance of Section 139 has not been taken care of. Second, in case of first auditor, when this appointment is being taking place, right, and in case the appointment is not done through board of directors, so the appointment has to now take place in a extraordinary general meeting, which is expected to happen in 90 days. So this also needs to be taken care. So when you are becoming a first auditor of the company, it is your job under item 9 to make sure that board has validly appointed within 30 days, or if the board has not appointed, then in extraordinary general meeting within 90 days, the appointment has taken place. So that is situation 1 in case of first auditor, where you are replacing the existing auditor, right? Where an auditor is appointed in place of an existing auditor who has resigned or has been removed. The problem is resigned or removed. So in this case, we have to understand which kind of vacancy has been created and how this vacancy will be fulfilled, right? Whether the auditor or auditors appointed by the company are holding this office jointly or other, right? Then what happens? And when one or more auditors are appointed by the company were not holding the offices earlier. So let's go on each situation. When we were discussing of the first auditor, we were discussing, I told you that within 30 days, board of directors have to appoint. If board of directors fails, then in EGM, it has to be appointed in 90 days. And if auditor, last thing, if an auditor is removed before the tenure, so recall, my friend, what was the tenure of the auditor for the first auditor? He was appointed in the board meeting or an extraordinary general meeting, and his tenure remains to be valid till the end of the AGM. In this duration, if he is removed, then you also have to make sure that auditor is removed before tenure, then special resolution and previous approval of central government is obtained or not, right? I take it forward as an incoming auditor, what you should verify. So if there is a casual vacancy, right, whether the board of 3-4 things you should verify, whether the board of directors had powers to fulfill casual vacancy or not, and have passed the resolution of filing the casual vacancy. Second, if it is the resignation of the auditor, so we need to see whether the proper resolution has been passed in the general meeting of the company. If it is the removal, we know a special resolution needs to be passed and the approval of Ministry of Corporate Affairs needs to be taken. That is, as an incoming auditor, you should verify. So first, you should understand under what circumstances. Second, for each circumstances, I have laid down or our council have laid down the procedure here. Last thing, what are the requirements of section 140 and how do you make sure that you are complying to requirements of section 140? So the member has to be given a special notice, right? And this notice shall be sent by members to the company not earlier than 3 months, but at least 14 days before. So you have to make sure that this reaches to 14 days before. You have to obtain a true copy of this notice as an incoming auditor. Second, you have to also ensure that this special notice have reached to all the members at least 7 days before the general meeting. You also have to make sure that this special notice reaches to the retiring auditor. All this you have to make sure that you are complying to section 140 of the Companies Act. And lastly, you have to also look into whether there has been any representation and the same representation has been considered in the general meeting or not. All these 4 conditions I have walked you through the process needs to be complied to make sure that the requirements of section 140 are also fulfilled, along with in case you are duly qualified for an appointment. So I'll just sum it up, Ashish ji, what we concluded, and then we take up this question. as I told you, I'll take 2 more minutes, Ashishji, to conclude this, and then 10 minutes we take it for
Yes, sir.
questions.
Please, sir. Please.
Some important things which came to our notice today. One, 80% of the cases of disciplinary committee approximately pertains to uh, a dispute between incoming auditor and outgoing auditor. We very critically analyzed the situation of the understood what item 8 has to say, how this communication needs to be made, when we should start approaching the company, when how the company is actually expected to respond, what could be the probable challenges while taking up government audits, what could be the probable challenges while taking up IT audits as per Income Tax Act. All these things have been minutely discussed. But if I have to pick one thing in item 8, I think the process of communicating is something which needs to be made sure. The process of RPAD, the process of writing it through an email, a written acknowledgement where you have a written acknowledgement, and recently we will find how our UDIN is integrated to this. When I move to item 9, we realize that we have to make sure that section 139 and 140 are duly complied with. I told you in maximum cases, we see the date problem. Sometimes the communication is made later. Sometimes the communication is even made after the attestation. Sometimes even after making the communication, if you receive an objection, then you retire, then also you're not exempted from it. Thus, making sure that section 139 and 140 are also, complied with due spirit. Please, one liner, don't accept the appointment, even if it is a government appointment, without ascertaining whether the Companies Act section has been complied or not. There should not be a case of unjustified removal of auditors. If that happens, then that application moves to Ashishji only, where unjustified removal has taken place. I hope I was able to technically solve this. I am happy to take your answers, but yes, we should consider this, that the profession is standing at a very turbulent time, and in these turbulent times it is important that within us we maintain a great harmony, great communication, strong communication, positive communication, and not obstruct, making sure that we don't obstruct the client to change the auditors unless you have a valid reason. There has been some government, AG writing to Ethical Standard Board, or writing to disciplinary committee, or RBI writing to our governing boards, talking about that outgoing auditors have been obstructing. I have a humble request to make here, that as outgoing auditors, let's maintain the dignity of the profession. We should make sure that an incoming auditor is allowed very easily, uh, unless there are governance issues, unless there are ethical issues, and if they are there, then I don't think there is any point of being considerate towards any client. Thank you so much for patiently listening. Over to you, Ashishji.
Yes, sir. So thank you for your wonderful session. And I'm sure that this must have been quite useful for the members in determining the valuable aspects of the various perspectives of clauses 8 and 9 of part 1 for schedule of the CA Act. So there are some questions, and I now request CA Sagar Atri, who is the Sikasa chairman of Jhansi branch, to please raise the questions which we have received. Sagar Atri, sir, please.
Yeah. Thank you, Ankit sir, for such a lovely session.
Thanks,
I
Sagar.
think that most of my questions are already answered, but as the pattern goes, here goes the first question that I am asked to ask you. Can we communicate to the previous auditor through courier?
No, I think we answered this. The chairman Ethical Standard
Right.
Board himself answered this. No. Okay.
Yes. So the second question is, it is sometimes not possible to find details of the previous auditor. Sometimes contact details of the previous auditor also change. How is it possible to contact the previous auditor in such a case?
So as I told you that, sometimes the address is wrong, or sometimes you are unable to fetch the details. Specifically in case of government audits in private companies, I told you, the first slide of this entire presentation talks about that there has to be a communication with client. So when you look here, the old auditor, the as an incoming auditor, you are expected to communicate with the company and ask whether the company has informed. This company will provide you the details. How is it possible this company also doesn't have the detail of the previous auditors? I still don't know, right? So if still, if there are some in some government engagements we realize it, but I think this is well documented. The point is, it is responsibility, I'm reiterating, for the incoming auditor to communicate with the company, seek the details of the outgoing auditor, and then communicate with him.
Right, sir. So the third question is, incoming auditor of a closely held company requests the outgoing auditor that the new auditor appointment and seeks no objection why he should not accept the same by email. The outgoing auditor, who is a chartered accountant having COP, asks to send email by digitally signed, since plain email may be by
I lost your voice, Sagar. Sorry, I lost your voice.
should we do in such a case?
Sagar, you
Hello.
have to come up with the question. I heard, like, correct me, there is an email exchange which has taken place. After the email
So
exchange, the outgoing auditor is asking for a digitally signed letter through email. Is it right?
right, right. What should be done in such a case?
So once you have, see, as an outgoing auditor, once you have received the communication, I don't know why somebody will ask it unless there is some intent of, asking it in, because email and a digitally signed letter remains to be the same. I still don't understand the intent of an outgoing auditor to ask it, but email is absolutely valid if registered on, valid address of, if delivered to valid address as per ICI record. There is no confusion. Institute will always take the side of the incoming auditor in this case.
So from what I understand, sir, the request should be sent from the registered email ID, which is as per the records of ICI.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Sagar, we are solving this for all now. So once this is done through CA Connect or UDIN portal, I think this problem itself eradicates that we are not able to find the firm address, or we are not able to, find the right email or address when everybody is mandatorily registered on that portal. Soon we'll solve it. But as of now, uh, yes, you have rightly interpreted it, Sagar.
Okay, sir. The next question goes like this. We come across some assurance assignments where the time to communicate with the previous auditor is not enough, and the assurance work to be taken immediately, and even we are not given the details of the previous auditor to communicate, like in the case of concurrent audit of bank. In these cases, what procedure we can take so that our code of ethics is complied with?
So, Sagar, I think we had a good discussion over it in the session. I'll still one liner. Conditional acceptance is the key. Please don't give unconditional acceptance. And the conditional acceptance should specify that our acceptance is subject to our communication with the previous auditor. That's all. You can begin with the assignment, and then, if there is some contrary communication coming up, we will resolve it.
Okay, right. Can a system be created thereby simultaneously? Intimation or communication may be shared or provided to the institute.
So I think that's what they are trying actually through, CA Connect through UDIN, and that we have enough deliberated. Yes, there has to be some use of technology, which institute should take up. I am with you absolutely. Uh, if there is no technological intervention, I think unnecessarily we lose our critical time of benches on these matters, right? So there are more critical matters of SFIO, Enforcement Directorate, more complaints which are pertaining to other misconduct. So possibly once this happens, we will see a substantial reduction in number of complaints of item 8 and 9, and this will happen. We are on this track.
Okay.
That's what my understanding is.
So the last question is, previous auditor gave resignation, company or board or authority, wherever whatever is applicable, accepted, then why should a new auditor needs to give any communication as a requirement? If the new auditor needs some help or courtesy, then okay. But why the legal requirement between a CA to CA when it is related to a third party and the third party is already accepting the resignation?
So point here is that underlying objective of this clause was to actually make sure, I'll go on the next slide itself. So what was the objective? And that is why I put up this slide. So one, as an incoming auditor, maybe he wants to share some critical information with you. Maybe he might have some outstanding piece which is unresolved. Maybe to maintain interest of the public, sometimes while doing an assurance, Sagar, you might also have faced it. Sometimes we feel that we have to withdraw the engagement itself, right? And as an ethical practice, what we do is that we resign instead of the client removing us. He asks for a resignation and we resign it. So if there are some challenges, undertaking that assignment as a professional to professional only, I should communicate. So there is a clear underlying intent, and the intent is not to obscure the problem. What here has happened, Sagar, is that this tenure of 5 years, block of 5 years, and in between also, if there is a change, it is creating a casual vacancy. So here, sometimes the incoming auditor feels that he's been obstructed, but that is not because of the ICI bylaws. That is because of the Companies Act duration of 5 years. Otherwise, you just have to communicate regarding, undertaking an assignment, making sure there is no undisputed fee, and it's the duty of the incoming auditor to outgoing auditor to let you know the nitty-gritty. So I think I don't think that we should get away with this. This is massively in the interest of public. That's what my take would be, Sagar.
Okay, sir. So that was all the questions that I had.
Thank you for
So
a wonderful moderation,
host.
Sagar. Thank you for helping us out. Over to Ashish.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir. Sir, I thank you again for your excellent session. And I also thank Sagar Khatriji for taking the question answer session. And I also thank the Jhansi branch for its cooperation and facilitation of the program. I thank Dr. C.A. Anuj Goyalji, who is the chairman of Ethical Standard Board, for guiding us in absentia. And I thank all the members for watching this program. Keep tuned to the programs of Ethical Standard Board. Thank you all. Thank you.
Right. Stay connected. Thanks, Ashish ji. I sign off. We can connect through LinkedIn, whatever we can. Bye.
Thank you, sir.